Good morning, it's Monday, October 5th, 2020. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Nathan, a second by Santos. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action to approve claims dated October 5th, 2020 in the amount of $346,650.11.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Scott,
Second.
second by Doug. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action to accept a proposal from Control System Specialists to replace or upgrade the Muscatine County Jail building controls in the amount of $320,000. Oscar?
This conference will now be recorded.
That's good.
Okay.
So the last time we had some questions about procedure and the features of this proposal. We have Randy right here from CS Controls who can answer all the technical and software questions about it. Also have the sheriff with the reasons why we need to move on.
Okay. And I think we had some clarification. I think a couple of questions were kind of scope and exactly what we were replacing was one of the questions. And I think the second question was as it pertained to the maintenance contract. And I think there was a bit of a clarification in there. So now my memory's sinking. I read that Friday. So it was the maintenance contract was, there was the $320,000 plus an additional payment first year that would cover what would typically be the traditional maintenance, correct? And I believe, CJ, that was always in your budget, that
Yes.
you handled those maintenance contracts.
Yeah, there's always been a line item in there to address that. The current contract was with CI3, so this company is doing similar work to that. The heating and cooling system, of course, is an integrated system. It's computerized. It has to have the ability to talk to other systems like the fire suppression system. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
So, this system, you said is part of Simplex, or it's connected with Simplex, from my understanding, or the interface with Simplex, not a smoke control system? It says Simplex does that part. So it does interact with it?
It talks to the Simplex system.
I'm sorry, could you tell me who you are, please?
I'm sorry.
Who are you?
Oh, Randy Bullock, Control System Specialist.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody always refers to Simplex, and Simplex was actually purchased by a company called Johnson Controls.
Correct.
So it's currently a Johnson Controls system, but most of us know it as the Simplex system. But trust me, he knows much more about it than what I do, but yeah, the systems have the ability to interface and talk to each other. That's a computerized process.
Okay.
So that was one of my questions in the base technology, because I believe one of the challenges we've had over the years is the Simplex system has been mostly proprietary controls and proprietary everything, and so that what we're doing now is, my understanding is you're switching over to more of an open source or an open
Correct.
platform. Obviously, you guys still have code that you provide and integration work it is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's also on a platform that's widely used in the industry. If, your company weren't around in 5 years, there would still be supportability and accessibility of this.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the other questions, that I think we had, or I had, was, how many layers deep are we going? And are you just on the control side, or do we have, I'm trying to understand how deep the proprietary is. Are we using kind of industry standard PLCs? Are we getting to that level, or where are we at?
The new system that we're installing is uses BACnet, which is, in the last 10 years, they've went to that, and it's, BACnet is, an industry-wide, communication. So we can talk to Johnson Controls, they can talk to us, you know, all other manufacturers out there. As long as they're BACnet certified, you know, our systems can interact with one another. You know, clear down to the controller level, you know, the lowest level on it, so. If for some reason you guys didn't like us or whatever, you know, and you can do an addition and you could put in someone else's system and tie it in with ours. You know, so everything is interoperable, where the older system have, it's all proprietary, it's them or nobody, you know.
Okay. Santos,
Yeah, so a little bit on your warranty.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned, the maintenance contract is to cover monthly inspections, service calls, and replacement of all failures of existing parts not replaced during the installation and control components
Yes.
are not covered under warranty. So approving this, you're basically saying that if there's something that fails in that system, we're still gonna get billed for it as far as parts but not labor, or what do you?
No, that's under the,
Under the contract, if we have any of these existing Andover systems or replacement of sensors or any of these types of current systems, you're saying you're gonna,
we'll warranty them. So if you have a sensor fail
currently,
with, as long as we have the maintenance contract, it's covered. So there wouldn't be any additional cost for it.
and then once we get the system up and running, 16 weeks from now, in the second year, the increase goes to 52,000, and that'll still be covering those, or will only be covering for the warranty after the 16 weeks.
No, it'll still cover everything.
so, but your maintenance contract that's not a hardware and software, that's you're not,
It says it replaces parts of
Yeah,
sensors.
it is
and
hardware.
warranty.
okay, so you're building in some obsolescence into the process
Yeah.
so that you know kind of what an expected failure frequency would be, and you've okay,
Exactly.
okay.
And so, one of the questions that we had for clarification, or the request that we made was, you're in this scope of work is you're removing the old and installing the new, not just installing new.
Correct, we're removing the old and installing the new.
And now I'm not 100% familiar with this system, but I know when Bill normally talks to us, a lot of these systems on the back end of it, you've got some kind of a server or hardware. And so what about the long-term maintenance? Is that something that we would need to plan for at some point? The technology might be but your maintenance contract takes care of that and re-upping all of that?
Maintenance takes care of all that, we keep it, the software upgrades as they come out, you know, we keep everything up to date.
Okay, so that covers all that your contract covers all the subcomponent maintenance agreements that would be required to keep us operating with a current, maintainable system. Okay, all right.
CJ, do we have a current contract right now with anybody?
Yeah, we currently we're under a contract currently with CI3. That contract usually takes effect on July 1st and it runs till June 30th of the previous year, so that's what we're involved in right now.
So will we be canceling that one, or are we gonna be
Yes.
double dipping for a while?
So you got like a 60-day out or something like that?
Yeah, there's provisions inside that contract where we can end that contract, so we're gonna proceed to end that contract when we enter into a new agreement.
Do you feel confident and comfortable with Control System Specialties?
You know what, I didn't know what to expect, we sat down, we had a fairly lengthy meeting with them. One of my big concerns was that this not be a proprietary system, because we currently have a proprietary system, and I hate them. So, essentially, when you get involved in these contracts and somebody has a proprietary system, you have just placed yourself in a position to be held hostage. Because it's gonna cost a lot of money to go away from them. And that was one of my main concerns when I met with these folks, and due to industry upgrades, essentially, we're not in that position anymore, so that's a much better position to be in.
Was this system, was the original CI3, was that in the original jail, or is that in the, and so then in the the newer, facility is,
It's all integrated.
It's all CI3.
So yeah, it began a long time ago, but it's all integrated throughout the building.
okay, and so this will replace all of that, we'll
Yes.
redo that.
Yep.
Have you had conversations with the project that I think that we have had currently going on with the hot water with, Nolan and, who's doing that?
Crawford?
Crawford? How is that interacting with this? Because it says that it's gonna be controlling your domestic hot water systems, and that's what we're putting in over there.
I haven't had that conversation, but I know Oscar's had that conversation.
I have had a conversation with them, or with him. My job right now is updating what we're doing and what we have right now. So right now, CI3 is under the impression that he's gonna take over this project, so he's gonna integrate the hot water system.
So the hot, because this has got an HTML, so it's gonna have a graphic screen that's gonna somehow control it,
That's
correct?
Right now.
So then that's what I'm saying, how is that interaction, or we've already had conversations with Mike and their group, that they're gonna pull cables to get into this, or sensors, or how they,
It's just a matter of jumping on the network that runs throughout the building there.
and you're gonna be able to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm trying to clarify, that
Yeah, but,
it's not
but
missed.
currently, because you have what you have, it'll be integrated with with CI3, we'll do the integration, do the upgrade, so to speak, and then as we come along with this system, we'll just replace their integration.
A week before last, they came and looked at the specs of the new water heater system. I didn't do it, I didn't mention anything about we're gonna change anything, you know, so they have to make modifications to interface with that. Last week, I had a visit for one of the technicians, just to check around, I didn't mention anything yet. He was checking sensors, everything, I told him about future plans, that expansion of booking or something. Of course, never mentioning that we're gonna, that would be CJ's job, because he's gonna decide if he terminate a contract or not. So right now, everything is with CI3.
And so do we know if the sensors and zone controllers or whatever they put out there are gonna be compatible, or they're not proprietary again, they're going more toward where we would be heading here?
That is correct. Right now, the interfacing that we have with them is based on what they provide, which is just, I don't know how to say it, it's just 7 seats as I know it. It's not out to the network,
Yeah, it's
you
just
know, backnet.
back then.
So when CS controls, if they take over, they're gonna be able to swap.
I just have two more questions. Can you clarify, what does item 13, mean when you talk about the generator and stuff?
There's a building generator there, and that goes through a test mode once a month and generates a report. And we receive that information from that generator so they can print out that report. This is something the sheriff needs to.
We have a necessity to print that report out because that's part of our yearly jail inspection, both of the state of Iowa and the United States Marshal Service. And that's something that for the last several years, CI3 has been failing to provide us with, even though they're supposed to. So it kind of puts us in a bit of a quandary every year to try and generate that report. There's necessary paperwork that we have to file. So that was one of our concerns that we brought up with this company, and they have assured us that they take care of that.
So you're not like shutting power off to the jail and then seeing that generator turn on and then see
No.
it work, none to that effect?
No, it's a monthly scheduled test, a very regular thing for us to do. We just need it to create a log, because we need the log at the end of the year to show we've engaged in at least 12 tests.
Every Wednesday, between 8:30 and 9:30, the generator runs for 20 minutes with load. So we don't need to shut anything, so you're just testing. But that signal is not reported either to CI3 or to them, so they can provide a proof that the generator is in self-mode testing.
Okay.
Okay,
So, if we were to start this project, Mr. Bullock, when would we be doing that?
When would it start?
In 16 weeks.
Yeah. By the time I get parts order and stuff, we'd be starting within 30 days.
And your training that you mentioned that you were going to help, that is going to be training, CJ's team, Oscar's team, who's that training that you're providing?
Whoever you guys needs that information.
That's all I have.
Okay, any other questions?
Got mine.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Nathan. Is there any further discussion? And Nancy, I would assume that we're considering this a service contract, and therefore we don't have to go through, there are different rules on our competitive bid.
Right, and this is a situation where, we specifically, we're specifically interested in having a non-proprietary system, so, the rules say that we can, if we have somebody that we use now, for other things, that we can go with them.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Thank you for coming in this morning and clarifying for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, CJ, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5 are items with Mike Nolan of Horizon Architecture. I'll assume Mike is on the line. Mike, are you on the line this morning?
I am. Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep. So Mike, we have the first item is discussion of possible action to approve change order 21 for the Muscatine Maintenance Facility project in the amount of $1,893.30.
Yeah, this is just a wrap up from swapping out that overhead door. If you recall, as we discussed there in that first portion of that project, we had to swap the door out, and since it was a segmental, there was gonna be some changes to the jamb. So what you're seeing here is the work to come back and redo the flashing and trims around that door opening, adjust the siding. So this work has been completed, ready to go, so just catching up and make that change.
Okay.
You need a motion?
Yep.
I'd move to approve.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Doug.
Isn't this the same item that we had already had the change where we had recognized a error on this piece, Mike? Where we had ended up saying that, this was the roll-up door that we ended up having to pay 11 grand for? Is that correct?
Yes, this is the change, so this is the additional work we need to do to swap out this door, so this is the same door, yep.
I'm a little conflicted by this one because this is the same one that we had recognized that if, had you probably been there, we would have been able to identify this one, correct?
This was one that I think what we decided was that there was a conflict on plan, that did not get caught during the installation, so we swapped the door out, and it was a decision, and what I did at that time was, since there was oversight on somewhere in between, is that I forewent the remainder of my management and construction administration fee for the project to make this swap out happen.
So why can't we have that for this portion of that?
I have no money left on the project. I've been working free for about 5 months on it right now, so I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments? So I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same?
Nay.
Okay, Betty, did you get that? We had 4 ayes, 1 nay.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, item B, discussion and possible action to approve change order number 2 for the Muscatine County Sheriff's Office Addition project in the amount of $339.26. Mike, did you want to discuss that?
Yeah, On the, new, with the existing wall, that will become the party wall between the addition and the, new building, there's one window into a conference room that we were just looking at possible, approaches for. Originally, we thought we might pour out that wall, but after further look at it, I think we're just gonna do drywall directly on it. So the recommendation is just to remove that window in its entirety and then drywall, patch, and paint the wall on the other side in the conference room.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Santos,
Second.
second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Okay, item C is projects update. Mike, did you have a brief update this morning for us?
Yep, well, to start doing and getting something similar to this together every week, whether I'll be here at the meeting to discuss specific items or not, but I thought this would be a good way just to let you know what's going on, and what's upcoming for our various projects. So first we have the maintenance building closeout, so the final rail, which is the last piece, we need to get our final certificate of occupancy from the city. The fabricator was on site doing final fit on that, and then that was taken back to the shop to get primed and completion. Expecting final installation of that this week, painting of that rail, and once that's complete, we'll get in touch with Mike Hopkins to do a final and get the final certificate of occupancy issued for the building. That is in process. The entry screen material was verified from the manufacturer as piece delivered this week, and then hopefully we'll have bi-state sheet metal on site to do the final installation. That'll get the entry screens wrapped up on that. Those are the final two, I would say, the punch list items for the building we had remaining. The other items we're getting into is just more or less the ceiling grid modification to get to that ERV and filters. Still working our way through that, getting the mechanical and the electrical coordinated. Eventually what we'll do is have enough cleared out to where they'll be able to take out about a 4-foot by 6-foot swath of ceiling tile in that bathroom to access the entire lower portion of that ERV to get those filters swapped out. So that change is in progress. That's probably going to be wrapped up here within the next couple of weeks. But the goal is by the end of this week, if we have those entry screens installed, then that will be the final completion of what I would say is the original punch list for that project. We have a temporary CO right now, so just had a quick chat with Mike Hopkins on this and a couple of other things. He's good to go. Everybody's happy with everything in the building. And again, the railing was just something that we felt like just to be on the side of abundance of caution to make sure we had that in place for the ADA requirement.
Okay,
I'm just curious, Mike, return to the shop for priming, is it something they gotta take that up and back to shop and blast it and then prime it, is that the case? Okay.
Oscar's
It
nodding
was
yes.
just a small portion that they were field fitting, so I think they wanted to just make sure since they were tying into an existing piece that they had everything set. So my guess is they probably had to do a couple of tap welds in the field just to get things where they wanted. Oscar was on site, I didn't see exactly what they did, but I know they're getting back to get that prepped and then more or less want to have this look like a seamless install when it's all done.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay. So deputies' quarters, things are kicking along there. We are on schedule, completing the framing, mechanical, and electrical rough ends as major work for the next couple of weeks. Getting the roof put on, so probably about 50% of the metal is up. I suspect by the time I'm there tomorrow, they'll have the remainder of the roof metal on, and they'll be ready to start fashion and soffit after that. We should start to see metal panels showing up here in the next couple of weeks for the exterior, and what you'll see is after we get most of the exterior work and dried in, they're going to start working their way over to the existing portion of the building and working their way systematically around to get the siding pulled off, get the new weather barrier installed, and get the new metal panels put up. And they'll be working that concurrently while interior fit out and finish is going on the addition. The site paving is complete with the exception of the flagpole relocation. There was one change order that I wanted to get in front of you guys. We just didn't have everything coordinated. We pulled down the existing light pole to relocate that. It was just in the middle of the driveway. Previously, it had been fed overhead. MPW did not want to have that reset overhead, so they were requiring that we install conduit which we can install from our meter base over to the new light pole location. So there'll be a minor change order to get the conduit installed per MPW's direction. The other request we had from the sheriff's staff was to install lighting for the flag. So I'm asking the electrician to provide an option for, what we're gonna try and do is a cast into the concrete light fixture to uplight the flagpole. We discussed doing lighting off of the light pole, but MPW again would not allow any lighting other than just the area lighting off their pole. So minor electrical things coming up to get that flagpole lit and to get that light pole refed with that. The other thing that's in process is the Myers had the wall panels fabricated off-site by EBD. When they arrived on site, Mike Hopkins pointed out that some of the fasteners were overdriven. He was not going to accept those as they were. We've been working with EBD to put a fix together for that. We have an engineer involved with it as well. They came and did a fix, but it wasn't in accordance with the way the engineer had specified it. So we have to kick that back to EBD now that they need to provide another option, another fix. So waiting for options on that. At this point, we're either going to have them install additional studs was one option, and then put a new weather barrier on the exterior. So I'm not happy with the amount of compromise that they put onto the that zip wall, which is supposed to be the exterior weather barrier. The other option is they can pull down all the sheeting and start from scratch. Either way, this is in coordination. We're gonna have this done before we get to the rough in and cover up inspection. In constant contact with Mike Hopkins, the general contractor, and also with EBD to get this done. So just wanted to let you guys know that that's something that's in progress as well. So that's really going to be our major project or major piece to get done before we get to our completion of rough ends. Again, talking to Levi, the on-site, he said they probably have about 2 weeks before rough end inspection is they're ready for rough end. So not anticipating any sort of a schedule bump right now, and they have enough other stuff they can work around with, but just to make you aware, that's an issue that we're working with the city at this point.
Mike, who's EBD that you mentioned? Or am I
It's
quoting that
engineered
right?
building design. They do trusses and they also do panelized, so they'll do panelized wall systems.
And that's who you said you're working with on that to try to address those issues with the city?
I'm working directly with Myers, so we did not specify panelized wall system. That was a decision that the general contractor made. So my first point of contact with this is working directly with Justin Myers. And just, again, we're trying to help out with proposing solutions and passing along our concerns. But again, this is the general contractor's responsibility, and they know that. So that's who I'm working with as a primary point of contact to get the situation resolved. Engineer building design is the one who will either pay Myers to do the fix or will come to the field and do the fix themselves.
So they penetrated the zip walls, what they did, Mike, put excessive penetrations in
That's correct.
and lost the vapor protection?
Well, the bigger concern is that per code, there's requirements on fastener placement, and one of the specific things is that fasteners can't be overdriven to ensure the integrity of the shear wall. And these are the walls that essentially, you do your wind, your overturn, they basically keep things up so it doesn't get blown over in a storm, if you will. A lot of the fasteners along the edges were overdriven, so the concern was that they had compromised the material, so you wouldn't have an acceptable shear connection at that point. That's the bigger concern. My concern now is that we've gone back, we've put in additional fasteners, that we have overdriven in so many spaces that I'm not comfortable that just the flashing tape in itself is going to be able to cover up those penetrations. The way the zip wall works is it has a integral weather barrier on the surface, and then you put tape over top of where you have your nailing locations. That's assuming that those are flush mount nails. And it would be overdriving. I'm not confident. It's not something that I would feel comfortable leaving it that way with just a flashing tape to cover those penetrations in the long term.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, so just no major other things coming. I was going to let you know for the next 2 weeks. The work is coming up is complete the rough ends, get the roof completed, and I'll update you week by week. So if there are any things in particular that you see coming up that you'd like to be on site to observe, please let me know and I'll coordinate with with Myers to get an exact date and time when that's happening.
Mike, you mentioned that.
So last we have, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment, you had mentioned on your maintenance building closeout, you had the grid filters, that your, coordination in progress, what did we ultimately end up addressing on that, or how did we end up repairing or making that better user-friendly for the operators or technicians when we change those out?
And so essentially what we're gonna be able to do is take all of that, the ceiling tiles out of the way so they can have full access to the lower portion of the panel on that, ERV unit that needs to be accessed. After looking at it, a possibility of popping one or two tiles here or there, it didn't feel like that was gonna be enough, to still not make it a struggle to get those filters replaced. So what we're doing is we're gonna give them the ability to completely remove that 2 foot or 4 foot by 5 to 6 foot section of ceiling to have access to the bottom of the unit.
Okay. Thank you.
The last thing we got rolling right now was two other things. So the county jail roof replacement is in progress. They should be wrapping up the upper portion, basically the octagon portion today. And then they're gonna be moving over to the other, the more rectangular portion of the second story of the upper roof. That'll probably be wrapped up here within a day or two. Looks like we have great weather this week, so after that, they're gonna jump right down to the lower roof. That's gonna take a little more time to get through that, just so we have all the equipment, the stands, things that need to be modified and replaced as they go along there. By and large, good shape, definitely on track to get done by the end of October, and I suspect we're gonna be done well before that, assuming we have a good stretch of weather. So far, everything looks good, and there are a couple of concerns about the south lawn, seeing some rutting after the rain we had first of last week. Discussed this with Chris Mueller, the project manager, and they understand that they'll return the turf back to the original condition before they go. So you may see a little bit of rutting and kind of tear up of the turf as we go there. We'll get that replaced. As we move to the lower roof, we won't need to be able to get up. We won't have to get on the grass at all. Everything will be accessible from the tarmac. So other than that, still progressing.
Mike, on the roof, was there any insulation or anything added that we found that we needed, or was everything that you're taking out is kind of showing what we thought we were gonna need to replace?
Nope, to this point, they had everything stripped off and they have not asked about any additional insulation. So I'm assuming that the areas that, we suspected might have a little bit of water around them, weren't that bad. There are a couple of roof drains, so I will verify that with Chris, but to this point, there has been no discussion of unit costs for additional insulation. Once we get to the lower roof, we're adding an additional 2.5 inches across the entire roof, so unless we find a particularly bad spot, we shouldn't have any additional on that either.
One question from my perspective, which I know a little about roofs, but very, these roofs are kind of unique in themselves as well too. How do they address the drainage in some of those corners where we saw water sitting for a while? Is that something that they slope and then they use lasers or something, or how do they end up doing that kind of stuff? And that if you don't know it, you can let us know next time. It was just something that I didn't understand when I saw some of those areas when we were up there.
Sure. With the entire upper roof, has tapered insulation that, so it's a flat roof with tapered insulation that directs the water back towards the drain. So some of what just happen is over time, you get a little bit of compression of the insulation, so you will start to get a few little lower spots here and there. So we're installing is a new cover board, which is going to be a more rigid than what was originally there. So that will help to maintain kind of the surface and the flatness of the roof as we go. So the upper area, all the slopes seem to be fairly well in place. On the lower roof, the deck is actually sloped, so the roof framing is sloped towards the centerline drains. We'll inspect the tapered insulation at those points, and if there's any sort of low spots, then we'll try and address those as we go. Again, the existing scheme that was defined in the original print, and as should have been installed, has proper slopes to all of the areas. What we'll look at is if there are particular areas of emphasis. I'll discuss this with Chris, just to see what that underlying material looks like. But again, with the lower roof, we're adding 2.5 inches of new insulation plus the cover board, so we should have a much flatter roof at that point if there's any compression over time for the older insulation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. There, I heard a question on the hot water, so that, all the submittals on that project have been approved. Talking with Scott Stubblefield, they're ordering, equipment in right now. So my suspicion is that we'll have the roof wrapped up well in advance of when they're ready to start that project. As they get closer to a start date, I'll report in and let you guys know when we anticipate that work will be starting as well.
Good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on projects? Pretty big list there. Okay, next item is discussion and possible action to approve a design services contract for the Muscatine County Jail Booking Expansion Project in the amount of $79,500. Do you wanna talk a little bit about that, Mike, and kind of scope of services and what this is all about?
Absolutely. So this is we have probably two big projects remaining from the master plan. One is the booking expansion and the other is the renovation and repairs to the county attorney's office. The booking expansion is the first one we're gonna talk about right now. So during essentially during the master planning, we identified that the current booking and intake area was designed for the original jail. Since that time, I think that the capacity of the jail has probably increased by about 200%, so they still have the same capacity for intake without, or they originally had with a lot larger, let's say, throughput. So we just talked about a few items that we really needed to have a way to streamline and maybe add a little more staging area to make that area a little more efficient. So the idea here for the scope is to revise the interior layout to accommodate the larger prisoner in processing booking. We're going to have space for additional storage and accommodate 2 new vehicle sally ports. Essentially, we're going to revise mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and all of that to figure out more or less how to work a better process to bring, basically to get people booked into the facility in and out. So we're anticipating it's probably about 1,000 to 1,500 square foot. We're using the current sally port as much as we can. I would say the next step, and this is very conceptual at this point, is to really sit down and do a deep dive with the sheriff's office to figure out exactly how that works and functions best for them. Total scope of services, this is, as we discussed, a full turnkey design package. So we're going to use Watersmith Engineering to do the site and civil design work for us. That's going to come into some site planning, site layout, things along that line for the revisions along the south side of the jail, back from Walnut Street there. Axiom Consultants, we're providing the building engineering, so that's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural. I'll be providing the architectural design services for the project and specification. This scope of work is full spectrum from design all the way through construction and administration. What I opted to do for this, just because we're having some ongoing conversations of how the county wants to handle owner's representation through projects, is that this portion of the work includes just the work as architect to do construction administration, which includes review of submittals, conversations with the general contractor, request for information or site questions, and then at least bi-monthly site visit inspections to verify payment applications. The thought there is that it sounds like we have a little more conversation to go through with what exactly, if there's any more desire to have me have more in-depth scope of services, and that's something that we can talk about as we get closer to construction on that. So that's what we're looking at here. Design team of Horizon Architecture, Watersmith Engineering, and Axiom Consultants for this project.
And that 79.5 number would indicate all of those 3 proposals within that number.
That's correct. That's everybody in. So I'm the prime on this, if you will, and then these guys are my sub-consultants. So yes, this includes the fee for all of the consultants, and this is the entire project.
Okay.
So Mike,
Oh, yeah.
I have a couple of questions in regards to what your proposal is on this document, and I appreciate the in-depth on some of these items. In your comments that you mentioned before, is you're basically saying it's a turnkey, but yet we have some sort of owner representation that helps clarify communications or maybe changes throughout the project if needed? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think based off of the feedback and conversations we've had here over the last couple of months, it sounds like you want to have somebody from the county more involved with projects. We've been having some of those conversations. I would just say at this point, we don't have that completely resolved, but it's time to get going for design on these projects and keep them on the schedule we've discussed. So the idea being there is that over the next few months, we can sort out exactly how the county would like to do its owner's representation and sort out what role I have in that. If it's anything beyond what a traditional architect would provide for a project, again, I'm happy to do that. But what you have here is what I would say is a typical scope of services I provide for every other project as far as my involvement during the construction process.
Well, that's one of the items that I think we as a county want to address, because I think that to help clarify what the owners in the end, customers, I'm gonna say, for example, the maintenance building or the jail or even the sheriff's group, what are we providing for input in things that we need to address items, we need to clarify questions. And I don't think we as a group yet know how we want to have that representative interact with you. I know that Jeff and I had a conversation last week in regards to identifying, is that going to be Oscar? Is that going to be somebody from our engineering group? And I think that I personally want to have that identified because in some of these items, as you mentioned, it says that you're going to come twice per month. If it's a short project that's going to be a month, you're there one time. For example, as you mentioned on the jail. And if we come more than once in your items and your wording, I think it says it's $125 per hour if you come outside of those time limits. So I personally, I understand that we want to get moving on these projects, but I also think that we internally need to have those discussions, if it's Sherry, if it's our group, because I want to make sure that we're clarifying who's going to be this role representative that helps identify that. And I know that we had a long discussion about that too, but I personally think that I think we need to identify that prior to approving this, because then if we make changes and they're not in agreement with this contract, that's going to say, well, that's not my contract, that's not what I agreed upon. And I would rather clarify that with us internally prior to making the agreement. I mean, I understand where you want to have some of this engineering going forward, but I think we need to wait at least 2 more weeks before we can have that discussion to approve that, in my opinion. And I think it's such a clear item that we just want to have a better ownership representative. So if we say, hey, we spec'd out, blue carpet and now we want light blue because the attorney's office likes that for whatever reason, that owner representative can make sure we have those discussions prior to ordering the material that was spec'd out originally. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out as an item, but I think that those are items that, in my opinion, we need to have that clarified. And I know that Oscar has had those, some of those conversations, but I think that would help possibly also clear up some potential items that we can prevent from having maybe change orders that we're seeing after the fact that items have been executed. In your document, it says, review change orders with the recommended action owner representative, and I think those are items that I want to see. But who do we have as that group, and what authority do they have? That's where I'm struggling right now. So I think that's my input.
I do not disagree. That's why I put this together this way, so that you would have the flexibility and the leeway to have that and figure out exactly how the county would want to handle that. As far as the design process, I would say that we would involve, certainly from the beginning up through construction, talking with whoever the sheriff's office wants to have involved. Clearly, Captain McCleary would be involved in this conversation, and then Oscar as well. And that's typically we've had in the past when we do our design, is we'll bring in the owner's representative. So, for example, on the deputies' quarters, we spend a lot of time talking with Captain Slade and with Captain Reese to figure out exactly how to make that project work. Oscar's been involved and Sherry's been involved with design through all of these projects. I think it's just to the point where we switched to construction is where we're gonna see the biggest difference in how this looks. So if that's something that you feel like you need to hold off and figure out how the county wants to handle that prior to, moving forward with these, I certainly support that, and we're glad to start whenever it makes sense for the county.
And Mike, I mean, I appreciate the work that you put into this, I really do. My piece though is just that I wanna have more clarification from what we as a customer, end user get, and that we're communicating better, because I think that's the key piece that we struggle with in having, maybe more communication on where we're at on some of these, and having somebody from an owner representative here in the county. That's where I feel that we can have a better end product in the end, because then we can all say, hey, we've had good discussion about what's coming up. The owner representative is XYZ person, and this person's gonna be upfront communicating with you, and at the end, you probably will even have better updates for us, because we know what we're getting, and you're communicating in a more open forum, because you have somebody here as a representative. I know that may be a little bit upfront cost from our end if we end up putting that person in to do that, but with these size of projects, I mean, for example, this project itself, this is over $1 million. I think that it's imperative that we as a county have that conversation, and that's where I guess I'm just trying to ask that we possibly table this until we have that, but I'd like to have the board also address some of those items, because it's just my input.
Well, I will say this, I think you're 100% spot on this, Santos, to have a set of eyes that can watch this on a literally daily basis. And have these.
Even if it's for an hour or two, it depends on the job.
Exactly, but have the ability to, on almost a daily basis to watch what's going on, try to catch some of these issues that aren't satisfactory and so on. And, I think several of the items over here with the maintenance building are an example of that. And, that possibly could have been, prevented, yeah.
I think that way we can maybe revisit this, Mike, but that is my input, and I just would like to hear some more input from the board. If I'm way off, let me know.
Yeah, Santos and I discussed this last week after our conversation. You know, I always kind of reflect back on the past and things that have happened, and I said, you know, we've had a number of projects over the last number of years, and it just varies in the complexity and the size of the project.
Correct.
It has a big deal. You know, we struggled with when we did some work at this building, you know, and I think back to the jail expansion, the large jail, major project, $9.5 million project. And it went reasonably well from a construction administration, but what this board had done, or we had done as an organization, is we had Stu Willis, who had been a long-term maintenance contractor or employee of ours, and we put him on that project, and that was his role, to be kind of that owner's representative. And I think that's something that we need to think about as a board, and maybe have a discussion with some of our people. You know, who do we have? And, you know, and Oscar has a role. He's running the maintenance day to day, and sometimes adding a layer of responsibility like this may not be doing him any favors either, because he's got fires left and right and all kinds of problems that he's dealing with on a daily basis. So as I think through this, because we have, you know, I think the good news is we've had a number of projects, and as you can see just by our update today, you have 4 projects going active right now, and we're kicking off another couple of design projects, and that's just a lot of plates spinning in the air. And I think this board needs to decide what resources do we want to allocate to this, and how do we want to do that? Because we really don't have, you know, I'm familiar, you know, in my background, we always had facilities engineering, right? They had project managers, they had, you know, people that could review this stuff, and that when we knew what the end department wanted, and this was the ground game that made sure they got what they wanted, and it worked out well. And we don't really have that as a county right now. And I think we have to think about it, because we're doing a couple $1 million a year worth of work.
Correct.
And we just need to make sure that and I think it's probably a lot to ask to put it on somebody's plate that's already got a full plate, so that'd be my opinion.
Well, it's a spring project, so we have a little time to get it ironed out, the way we want it.
Yeah, so I think to Santo's point, the question as I see it right now is, we have before us today two design services contracts, which would be to initiate the process. So is it this board's desire to kind of figure this out before we enter into these agreements, or is this kind of a enter into the agreement, I don't know.
I
You
would-
probably need to figure it out
I
first.
would wait, in my opinion, just because some of these items are, I mean, the wording on some of these are basically stating that, in his words, it's turnkey, but in reality, it's only, services offered, not turnkey of overall, construction administration.
Right,
So
it's
that's really kind of
turnkey design, it's not turnkey.
design, and that's
you know.
really what I'm getting at, is if we're getting that, then we need to have who passes the baton to the next level and saying, okay, now we're gonna have there's project manager from the contractors, but there's gotta be an owner representative and saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not gonna fit my truck in there when we get to this, maybe we need to make this change, versus having a change order after the fact. We can address those during the construction phase instead of the after the fact. So how do we do that? And I think that's why I'd like to have that wording in here, having, he does have some of that owner representative, but I think that if we find more details that we wanna have as owners, I would like to have that collaboration with the engineering department, which I think, in my view, is gonna be Keith's group and Oscar's group and Sherry having a conversation. How do we ultimately, at the end, do we end up having a, engineer that comes from that group? And I know that Keith may not, we'd had this conversation before, but I still am gonna put it on the spot. We need to have some sort of an engineering or some sort of representative that has functional knowledge of how construction goes, to make sure, oh, wait a minute, that's not where the footing goes, or hey, they didn't, vibrate the stuff out, which in some cases, the design engineer is not gonna see some of those things.
Right.
We as the end user, we wanna make sure we're really getting what we're supposed to be paying for. And I think that again, I have every confidence in what Mike is doing. I just think that we need to have that worded in this contract of how we're gonna have an owner representative be the decision maker at the end, because they're the one that's gonna be the end user, because this is for us as far as a contract that's gonna say, hey, this is the end user, the maintenance building. This is the end user, the attorney's office. This is the end user, the sheriff's building. And at the end of the day, we're the ones maintaining it, controlling it, paying for contract services later on for warranty work, whatever it may be. That I think that we need to have that in there. So I would make a motion that we table it until we have that conversation. If it takes 2 weeks, great, but I think we should have that conversation also with who it ends up being, Keith's group and Oscar's group, and maybe even having the attorney in, to make sure that we just word it correctly. So at the end of the day, we still end up getting the design services. I'm happy with what Mike is doing in that aspect, but I think we need to clarify what we have as representatives in that group, because I think it will save us a lot of money in the future as far as change orders and making sure that we have better understanding of what's going on. I really do.
Yeah, I'm a process guy, and I like to have roles and responsibilities at each stage clearly defined in the process, so you can watch down and say, this is who should be involved and how they should be involved and whose responsibility.
And I think the other
each
piece
step
too,
is.
that
So I'm okay with that. I think that's a good idea.
I like, is that when somebody from let's say from Keith's group, for example, if he sees the building going up from the footings to the base to the roof going on, they know exactly the ins and outs of that building. Versus in the situation which the maintenance building, we don't know what's behind this wall. We don't know what, how they supported this. We don't know if they use this or that. I mean, Mike knows it because he's part of seeing some of those things. We may see it in a drawing, but in reality, we don't really see it until it's in.
Yep.
So that's where I guess that I think that, just like to your point, Scott, I think it would be a better piece, and it may and maybe even having some involvement where we may have Eric or his group be involved in it too.
The buyer,
Good time to lock in
I'm
here.
not- No, I'm not kidding, I'm serious, I think that's what we're gonna.
Too late now, buddy.
in my experience, with what I've done in my life, the buyer has to have a set of eyes.
Yeah, but
It's that simple.
And I
It's that
think
simple.
that's the clarification piece that I would like to see somewhere in this document, because I like I love what we're having, I like Water Smiths, I like all these groups that you're having involved in there, and him being the head oversight, but at the same time, where do we get a piece into making sure that we at least have some eyes on that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so does it, I mean, I think we could table these next two items. And I know Jim is probably, and I'm sure he has some comments on contracts and agreements.
Yeah, just from my perspective, the county has a master agreement with Mike. That is an annual agreement and renews every March, as it's currently written, with a 60-day notice of termination if you were gonna decide not to extend it to the next year. So right now, it's by its terms renewed until March of 2021. If the board or county ever wanted to do anything, there's a 60-day advance to do anything about that. And there's other termination provisions, but it's an automatic renewal unless we do that. It would appear to me, to answer your question, in terms of whatever you're gonna do from owner involvement, that's probably the agreement it would need to go in. These other agreements that you're talking about this morning are really the services agreement, which I think once you decide what your process is gonna be, probably should go in the master agreement, and then the service agreements just follow that process. Mike is provided some additional insurance information this morning, not that Nancy didn't have that, but I didn't see that over the weekend, and just so we have updated coverages in that agreement. I think Mike even has more coverage maybe than the master agreement says that he's required to have. So we can probably address that as well. And then, Mike, I sent you an email this morning about the T&M rate. The master agreement has a T&M rate that's $100 an hour, and then these agreements are $125 an hour, and the master agreement says it controls, which isn't a conflict. I assume it's gone up maybe since the master agreement was originally done, but just get those details resolved as well, so that we're all up to speed on it. I think the approach that I can see is good. Mike did send one additional contract I just got this morning. It's another roughly 40 pages that I haven't reviewed yet. So, but they're AIA documents, and they're generally very fair. And you know, I did have one question for Mike. However, Mike, in the two that you sent this morning here, your description of services looks to me to kind of be maybe a kind of a cut and paste thing, which may be the history. But are all of those services applicable to each of these projects, or would I be safe in assuming that some are not necessarily? And I'll give you an example. In the county attorney's office, I'm not assuming there's any geotechnical work. I could be wrong, but I'm just making that assumption.
This was originally had both of the contracts on the same form, being a service order. Sherry asked me to break those out. What we have here would cover everything that we need. So part of the county attorneys, one of the things we'll be looking at that in addition to just the building is we've been asked to look at the parking lot. So it's possible, I decided just to leave the full scope of potential services in there. Again, being a fixed price, that's gonna be to your advantage. So I think there's things in there, if you want me to break things out, then I can certainly tailor a little more. But for this point, it was, more to break the two out onto two separate forms for the purposes of a fee than so much the service description.
Yeah, that gives me the clarification I need. Thank you.
Okay, so, it sounds like, or do we have agreement, maybe we should table these two items until a future date, probably look to try to get this. I don't like to leave things hanging too
There's a
long.
motion on the table.
We have a motion on the table, I'm sorry, I have a motion on the table, so do I have to table? Was it a motion to table items D and E?
It was, both D and E until.
Okay, so
we
then I
have
would
a-
need a second.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Santos and a second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same? Okay, those items have been tabled, for further discussion, until further
Yeah,
direction.
and Mike, if you have some input that you think would be favorable in regards to how we have those interactions as well with our teams, if that be, Eric's group, Keith or Oscar's group. I mean, it may be tailored depending on what project it may be, but I think at the end of the day, it's somebody for a county representative. We would definitely be open to that input. I'm going to ask Nancy in regards to seeing how we schedule a meeting to have those discussions, because I kinda wanna get this moving as well. Hopefully we can have that in the next couple weeks to get these back on the agenda to get approved. As you mentioned, we do wanna have these ready for the spring.
Yeah, our intention is not to delay the projects, it's to keep moving forward, so.
So I would look to the board, is this a discussion that the entire board wants to have? Do you wanna appoint a subcommittee to talk with the other people that might potentially be involved in this, say the engineer's office, Eric's office, and come back with a recommendation? How do you guys wanna move forward with this?
I think the subgroup is fine. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think a discussion of the whole board, it's just, will slow the process significantly, so I think that if we could if we had one or two or a couple of board members that would be interested in thinking through and helping with this process, and then we could reach out to some of our, staff and some of the other county departments and come back with a recommendation to the full board for consideration, I think that'd be the most, prudent way to move forward, I would agree. We don't have anything on for action for that, Nancy, we probably would wanna put that on to action to assign a committee from the board if we did it as that, or?
You could certainly move forward. I mean, we did that with, the ordinance that we're talking about. The board just took action to allow a couple people volunteered to serve,
Okay.
on that, so you can certainly do that if you want to.
I think you can do that.
It will be the whole board that ultimately would have the discussion and the decision.
Yeah, okay. So do we have a couple of board members that would be interested in participating in that?
I would.
Santos? Anyone else?
I would do it.
And Scott? Perfect. Is that okay with everyone? Do I need to make any, we can just do that by consensus? Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Anything else for us this morning?
Yeah, no, Jim, I appreciate the conversation, and I think this is a good approach. So, I feel like this is good to get this sorted out. I have a few notes I started to scratch out and shared with Sherry and Oscar in our informal conversations. Who would be best to forward that to, just to have that on the table for the bigger conversation?
Probably to Nancy would be the best place to start that, and then she'll decide, she could decide which board members would need to see that. And Mike, I think I've seen some AIA things where they have some project flows with typical, I think they do it around scope of agreements, but where they have roles and responsibilities and scope, they might have some things that would show some recommendations around that. Am I making stuff up, or is that true?
Yeah, I mean, kind of did a little bit of research myself, trying to find a succinct flow chart or something along that line. I can keep looking, I haven't found anything yet. This is more a distillation of what I have seen, and more or less. So over the last 3 years since we started doing work, the county does not have a person who is designated as the technical person. So Sherry generally handles the building, the project. So that's how we've developed our system. And it sounds like we're at a point where we need to move it to the next iteration. So I will do a little bit of research and see what I can find with that. But more than anything, I think we just need to sit down and have a conversation, say, okay, what are we doing right now? What do we need to do? And then figure out where responsibilities start and stop. And then I think that, to Jim's point, and we'll go back, once we get that, we'll sort it out. Let's revise the master agreement, and we'll revise these task orders as well. The other thing we could do is we could break these out into individual contracts without a master agreement, so there's a lot of pathways forward. But I think I understand the intent of what we're trying to do, and glad to help in the process any way I can.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, yep, have a good day. Okay, we're on to item number 6, which would be discussing a possible action to accept the following reports. 6A is County Recorder's Office report of fees collected for the quarter ending September 30th, 2020 in the amount of $67,415.24.
Move to approve.
Have a motion by Scott.
Second.
Second by Nathan. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Item 6B, item County Treasurer's Report of fees collected for the quarter ending September 30th, 2020 in the amount of $276,242.23.
Move to approve.
Have a motion by Scott. Second by Doug. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Item C is the County Sheriff's Office Civil Department's report of fees collected for the quarter ending September 30th, 2020 in the amount of $20,441.55.
Move to approve.
Have a motion by Scott. Second by Doug. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item D is the County Auditor's report of fees collected for the quarter ending September 30th, 2020 in the amount of $568.35.
Move to approve.
Have a motion by Scott. Second by Doug. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Item number 7 is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of September 28th, 2020 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Doug and a second by Nathan. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Correspondence. Santos, did you have any correspondence?
I had two emails. One of them was in regards to contract services for emergency response notifications, and I forwarded that information or the contact to Brian. And then I had a email in regards to support of the ATV and UTV ordinance that we're looking at, and hoping that we can get that passed. So,
Okay.
that's all I have.
Nathan?
Only thing is I received a briefing from the kind of levy stakeholders group on some of the flood infrastructure improvement information on Friday.
Okay. I had nothing to note. Scott?
I had nothing to note.
Doug?
I did have an email from Information Wire to have a webinar this coming Wednesday to get updated on what's going on with the Weather Commission.
Good.
I did have that. That's all I had.
Okay. What about committee reports, Doug?
Nothing.
Scott?
I had, the, special meeting that was held on, Thursday, October 1st with the Conservation Board, and it was just to accept the bid for the install of the septic tanks and piping down at, Deep Lakes. That's all I had.
Okay. I had no committee repeat.
I did not.
None?
I didn't have
Santos?
any either.
Okay. Item number 10 are items with the administration office. 10A is discussion possible action to approve resolution 1005-2001 requesting reimbursement from the Iowa COVID-19 Government Relief Fund.
This is just for the second draw of the CARES funding that was made available. The number that you see in the resolution is a reflection of Board of Health additional eligible costs in handling their response to the COVID.
Okay. I have a motion by Scott. Second by Nathan. This is a roll call vote. Any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Doug? Santos?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Item 10B, discussion possible action to approve resolution 1005-2002, approving a 2080 agreement, parking ticket enforcement agreement between the city of West Liberty, Iowa and Muscatine County.
We've had a similar agreement to this in place with the city of Muscatine for a long time. Essentially, the way this works is if there's outstanding parking tickets, then the treasurer's office will not issue their renewals until those have been collected. And then by participating in that, we're allowed to keep a percentage of what the city revenue on that.
And I think this has worked well for the city, is my understanding. The city of Muscatine's done it for years.
And West Liberty's not had anything like this prior?
I don't even know they had meters over there.
Well, there's other time restrictions.
Other types of parking violations, I suspect, you know, okay. So do I have a
I'm
motion?
to approve.
I have a motion by Santos, and I have a second by Scott. Okay, any further discussion? This is a roll call vote. Santos?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Doug? Nathan?
I abstain, my firm works for West Liberty on traffic issues.
Okay, and I vote aye. So we have a 4 ayes, and Betty, you have that Nathan has abstained or
Yes.
recused himself?
Yes.
4 ayes.
Thank you. 4 ayes. Was that a dig at me? I don't know.
Thought it was me.
Well, me, well, pretty much all of us, I guess.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, 10C, discussion of possible action to approve resolution 1005-2003, authorizing the submission of a grant application to the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration, designating the Muscatine County Budget Administrator to act as an authorized representative and pledging local match dollars. I think you had the document, and this is as it relates to the levy stakeholders project, which we've talked about in the past. So that is, there is grant funding opportunity out of the Chicago office of the EDA, but it requires that there be match dollars. And so what this is a resolution for the Muscatine County Board to put together so we can submit the application. The EDA grant could be 50% to 80% of the project. The project was 6.5 or 6.7 million, one of the two, on this half. I will say, as we have talked in the past, that, you know, my intent on this, or my desire on this, would be that we go ahead and see what the EDA will do as far as a grant. It'll be 5 years to use the money, and then my intention would be, and we are actually working, our bond attorneys are working to look at the legislation that would be required to, a modification so that the counties can actually bond and affect payments to do levy improvements. But that's by statute today, cities can do it, the counties can't. So we have, bond attorneys are drafting language, and I've talked to legislatures to see if we can get that into the legislature. My desire would be if perchance EDA, this comes through and we get a nice grant, that we would be able to go into a public hearing process, because as you may recall, Sherry had put out and Nancy put out a really nice plan to where we could buy down debt, and we could bond for this money, and would keep us in great shape, and also would allow us to pursue the entire project, the entire 15 million, not just the 6.5 or 7 that we're talking about here. So the intent would be to get EDA to go through their process, so they actually give us what the dollars will be, and then continue on with this process.
So doing this, then the EDA will give, potentially they could give us feedback within 6 months or a year, do you know?
Yeah, well, we're originally trying to get the application in by October 1st, but with COVID, everything slipped, because if you recall earlier this summer, we talked about this. And so, it's obviously not October 5th or 1st, but they still do have these grant funds available. There's money from their federal fiscal year that they're trying to expend. So, I think there's a high likelihood, we think that there's, in the EDA project manager working with thinks this is a good project, and they are very interested in it. So that's about the best I can tell. And I don't know when their grant awards. Keith, you may have a better idea how long it takes. No? I know, Eric, you had to wait quite some time for EDA grant to come through on the buyouts. Well, that was Homeland Security.
Yeah, it wasn't EDA.
Yeah. So I don't expect the wheels to turn really fast, but parallel to this, I want to continue with the Iowa legislature to get us into position so that if we can affect some changes down on the island, that this board has the authority to do that and not, and the opportunity.
I completely agree. I think this is a great opportunity, knowing that, you know, we always seem to be in a reaction mode. If we were having a flood and say, well, why don't we do this? And something to this effect could come down the road and say, here we are, you know, working more preventatively than reactively, so.
But we do want to make sure that the board, number one, understands that, that you still would have an opportunity to turn down if you were granted, approved for a grant, and if you so choose that there wasn't any way we could recoup the money, you would have the opportunity to turn that down. But if you move forward with these funds and that legislation doesn't change, essentially what's committed here is everything in our debt repayment fund, and about 50% of what's in our building maintenance fund.
So it would leave us, we still have some in our building maintenance fund, but to me, it puts us closer to the, you know, I don't wanna get into a situation where this board doesn't have the assets available to take care of issues if we have them. So that'll be a decision. I think once we see what EDA is willing to do, I think this board will have to decide, is this a grant we wanna accept? And, you know, I'm guessing by that time we'll have a better idea of what the legislature may or may not do. So as we move forward with that. Because if we do anything as it relates to a bonding, that would have to go through a public hearing process as well. So we would have to engage the public and have, because we bond for it and have those kind of moves, so. A long process, I'm sure. So, any other questions or comments on this? So I would accept a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Santos,
I'll second.
a second by Scott. Any further discussion? This is a roll call vote. Santos?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
I just want one comment. Nancy, once we get this through, if you had any feedback back, or if you would, if they could share us what the EDA gives us any, you know, here's, this is approved, if you have any feedback on process or information or, you know,
Absolutely.
any sort of communication as far as timing, that would be greatly appreciated for our.
Yeah, and so, you know, just a clarification on this, is Muscatine County is listed as the grant administrator on all of this, and that was because the Island Levy, I'll mess this up, I think it's the Island Levy Association or Authority or whatever it is. I am not confident that they understand all the roles and responsibilities of accepting federal dollars. And so that, you know, the board, we are taking responsibility for that in this process. The oversight and the administration of these grant dollars, if this project becomes a bona fide project and we do move forward, we get the grant, then, you know, I'm most comfortable because I know we know how to administer federal dollars. And so we will be doing that on behalf of the levy district. So hopefully we will be in very close contact on it. Okay. Is that it for this? Okay. Item D is discussion of possible action authorizing Information Service Director Bill Riley to execute lease documents for 2 replacement copiers at the Muscatine County Jail.
This was included as part of the budget, this was part of the plan. Bill just isn't able to be here today, so.
I've got a motion from Santos,
Second.
second from Nathan. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item D, or E, I'm sorry. Discussion of possible action to adopt a revised donated leave policy.
I have had a number of employees over the last year or so approach me about possible changes to the donated leave policy that we have in place right now. Only allows employees to donate vacation, up to 40 hours a year, and it's done on the basis of if we have somebody who submits the proper paperwork and is eligible, then we send a notice out to employees that we have somebody who's eligible, and then employees can donate leave. It doesn't come out of the employee's bank until it's used by the person it's donated to. I've been approached about the idea of having a pool where people could donate excess vacation or into this pool, even though there isn't somebody necessarily eligible right at that point, and it would sit in this pool, and then if somebody became eligible, it would be there for them to use. So the revisions that you see, and in conjunction with that and doing some research, the language that we were using, in our donated leave policy about catastrophic medical issue, from reading some stuff related to the IRS, I felt like probably we need to make some revisions there. So the policy that you would see in front of you now defines a medical emergency as the IRS would like to see it defined. It refers to being able to still donate to a specific employee or donate to a pool. The other thing that I had been approached about was people wanting to know if they could donate more than 40 hours in a year, because right now you can donate up to 40 hours in your employment year. So it's based on your anniversary date. The policy, the draft that you see in front of you allows employees with more than 20 years of service. So it's the ones that would be accruing 5 weeks of vacation a year. It allows them to donate up to 80 hours. There used to be approval for donated leave could be for a year period. I reduced that to a 6-month period, and it would just require medical certification if that were to go on. And then the only other language that was added in here was kind of a clarification about kind of to meet with HIPAA standards that under no circumstances will the employee's name or medical information be released, which we don't do that now. It just kind of clarifies that in our policy.
Nancy, how much time can employees bank now in terms of leave?
How much can they,
Carry over from year to year?
for vacation time, you're allowed at your anniversary date, you're allowed to have what your current accrual rate plus 40 hours.
Okay.
So, for an employee that's been here for more than 20 years, on their anniversary date, they could have up to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And it's not unusual, the way this is monitored, Leslie's office handles all the accrual sheets from all the departments get submitted to her office. I get copies of all of them as well. She reviews them, and if anybody's at their anniversary date and they have excess, she notifies that employee and CCs me in. The employee then reaches out to me to request an extension. We allow, under our rules, we allow a 90-day extension to use the excess. And then in certain circumstances, very unique circumstances, they're allowed a second extension. If it's a situation like with the COVID issue, there was situations where it was difficult for an employee to take vacations that they needed to use up. So in certain circumstances, we will extend that for a second time. However, otherwise, if you don't use it up in that time frame, you just lose it. And we do have a handful of employees that lose vacation every year because they're just not able to take it.
Do we pay out unused accrued leave time upon separation?
We pay vacation out and vacation and accrued comp at your full rate. We pay sick leave at half your normal rate of pay. Sick leave, we also have a maximum of 720 hours. So each year we take a look at the end of November, essentially. It's the end of a certain accrual period, but it hits the end of November. Anybody who has more than 360 hours on the books can opt to cash out half of what they've earned in the last year at half their normal rate of pay. Most people don't do that, but once you hit 720 hours, then each year you're required to cash out anything above 720 hours at half your normal rate of pay. And that 720 hours is designed to coordinate with our long-term disability policy, which would kick in at that point.
Do we have any idea what the demand on this pool would be?
It really varies. It absolutely varies. We have had situations where we've had 2 or 3 people eligible at the same time. And then we can go for long periods of time where we don't have anybody who needs it for any reason. I happen to know that we do have a situation coming up where we likely will have 1 or 2 employees who would be eligible.
Is there a reason we've capped the ability to donate at 40 and 80 hours?
Is there a reason we've capped that? When this board was, the policy we have right now is at 40. This proposes upping it to 80, but the thought process of the board at that time was that we wanted employees to use their vacation as opposed to giving it all away.
Yeah, and you know, I guess I agree that everybody should take at least a vacation or some, but you know, I'm kind of what the contrary is that you can do it all but a week, and I'm okay with that. Because I view this as an accrued liability by this county anyway, and if somebody wants to donate their time, e.g. money, so that another employee doesn't have to suffer, I'm totally good with that. I think it's healthy for people to take at least a week's vacation a year, but
And I don't think we don't have anybody who's not taking at least some vacation.
and this would be, they could donate vacation or personal, just vacation.
Just vacation.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, comp time they can't.
Nope, they cannot donate comp time or personal time.
Yeah.
Or sick leave.
Yeah, that's my only comment on the policy. I wouldn't restrict how many hours they could donate. I'd say you could donate all your vacation for a year up to just keeping 1 week for yourself. And,
How many personal days do they have?
It depends on the year. The board, there's 11 holidays per year. The board designates, there's 11 paid holidays. The board designates how many of those are actual holidays. Some years you guys set 8 holidays and they get 3 personal days.
Okay.
Some days there has been years where you've set 10 and they've only gotten 1 personal day.
Okay.
And then most of the unions, all except secondary roads, I believe, all have defined holiday dates because they're 24/7 operations.
and we accrue sick leave as well, correct?
Yes.
We have, how many days of sick?
You accrue approximately 12 days a year, and that you're allowed to go up to that 720, and then once you hit that every year, we're gonna cash out what you have above that.
So the only other comment I have is kind of a generic one for anything that involves wage and hour issues and builds off what's in item 3F, which is about not restricting the right to terminate probationary employees. I think we need to include in here somewhere that nothing in this policy is intended to modify the status of any employee as an at-will employee. It's just a standard disclaimer I put in any type of new policy that has any kind of
Employment practice.
exactly.
All right?
You know, to Jeff's point, I would agree with him on that because there are individuals that have great satisfaction in helping other people and coworkers and so on and so forth. And, I would agree with Jeff's point 100%, you know, to let the individual decide what they would like to do. I think it's very.
It's a wonderful thing for the people who need
Yeah.
that,
It is.
It is, it is.
to be able to get a paycheck.
Yeah, I could see that kind of going departmentally a little bit, you know, some departments might.
Well, and this doesn't take away the ability to simply donate to an individual, so, I mean, and typically that's a situation, typically the situation is if we have somebody who's in need of it, the people in that department pretty much know that that's who that is, and you tend to see donations from that department. We have 3 or 4 people who will consistently donate 40 hours, they don't care who it's for. We have a few people that do that. This just allows people to do it even when there's not a situation. And it frankly allows people who are up against their use it or lose it date and just haven't been able to use it,
So,
to get to do something with it.
in an average, you know, the risk of a policy, you know, would donate it and it'd go into a pool, which I'm okay with. It's a liability we recognize anyway. On an average year, how many weeks of turn back vacation do we get? 3, 4?
We don't let people do that.
No, but I mean that lose it.
Probably 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. So, okay. So, yeah,
Do you need a motion?
Yes, I would need a motion to, so I guess the one clarification I want then is I hear Scott and Jeff talked about not having a restriction. Do you want me to make this language so they can donate all of their vacation? You want all but 40 hours? What do you guys want to do there?
I'm good with the way it is, but if you guys think that you wanna give more, I mean, we're already going from 40 to 80, but if you feel that we need to give.
for 80 over, if you have over 20 years.
Oh, okay, so if somebody doesn't have over 20 years.
Then they could only get 40 the way this is written right now.
Oh, I see what you're saying. And when do you get? Is it 10 years, you get 3 weeks, or what is it, how do we do that?
At the start of you start with you earn 2 weeks. At the start of your 5th year, that goes up to 3 weeks. At the start of your 10th year, that goes up to 18 days. At the start of your 15th year, that goes up to 4 weeks. And at the start of your 20th year, that goes up to 5 weeks. I believe.
I'd have to look.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
I'm open to what you guys are
I
thinking.
don't have a strong feeling
I
one
don't
way or the
see
other.
any problem with.
So do you want any limitation at all, or just that they can donate?
Everything but a week, if they want.
I think everybody
I think
should
it's
keep
their
at least a
discretion.
week, make people take. And then I think Nathan's comment would be a good one to add to it.
Add on about the at-will status, yep.
So we could do a motion to make with those adopt.
With as amended, yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So
I'll
does that
make
a
motion, yep.
So Santos is gonna make a motion as amended and Nathan will second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed the same? Motion carries. Anything else, Nancy?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Item number 11 is receive information from county employees. Do we have any county employees having something they wish to share this morning? Brian?
Good morning, I'll give you the latest information on our COVID-19 in Muscatine County as obtained from coronavirus.iowa.gov. Positive cases 1,168, recovered 966. Unfortunately, since last board meeting, there has been 1 death, so we're at a total of 56. The percentage of positive cases for Muscatine County School Districts is 6.4%. In regards to our long-term care facilities, there have been 41 positive and 31 total recovered. Therefore, Simpson Memorial is at 23 positive and 15 recovered. Premier Estates is 18 positive with 16 recovered. And that's all I have for you gentlemen.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? Keith has something?
Quick update on projects. On our paving, parking, entrance paving, we've completed the west half. Fire is working on the entrance paving, or getting the base ready, and probably we'll make that before that, the end of this week. It's obviously weather dependent. And then down on G28, they were able to last week pave from the bottom of the hill to the west part of the peat moss plant, which is also where the curb and gutter section starts. Peterson, the primary, was working, east of there from the peat moss plant to Lutheran Homes, west half of their driveway, and they'll continue on that this week. They might get that ready and pave yet this week on that stretch. Hard to say. There's a lot going on there in that area of old things left there. And we did have pavement marking contractor in and completed marking. They painted some in the rain that are going to get to redo. So that's all I have.
Keith,
What- I'm sorry, I was just gonna make a note that the weather forecast is looking very good, to moving forward there, so should make some good progress.
Keith, on G28, of that portion of that project you talked about, marking, is that part of the punch list items that Peterson's completing, or what would you, say that we still haven't gone through and done the full?
So basic to the west, they've still got smoothness grinds to do. They also have areas of pavement that have incentive, because it is very smooth. Yeah, that's part of the punch list.
On the Lutheran Homes area that they're going down through the meat pot and, peat moss plant, I'm sorry, meat process.
Yeah, I know where you're
Mind
going,
is
buddy.
going there. The traffic, are we managing through that? I know that there's a lot of traffic in those input areas and
Yeah,
output right there.
they're managing.
So they're managing through those. Okay.
Very good. Any other questions for Keith? Thank you, Keith.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other county employees wish?
I have something,
Okay, Betty.
okay? The auditor's office is open starting today for in-person voting through Monday, November 2nd. And we're voting for all Muscatine County precincts. We're located at 414 East 3rd Street, Suite 201. And the voting is during our regular hours, from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We would also like to strongly remind the public, since ballots that were requested by mail are not being mailed until today, please be patient and wait for your ballot before you try to do in-office voting. Since the voters' records will reflect that a ballot has been requested, voters who have requested the ballot should not try to arrive to the office. Give us a week, give the mail people a week to get the ballots out to you before you come into our office or call our office to see where your ballot is. Don't try to vote today or don't try to vote this week if you've requested a ballot by mail. It's in the works. We've sent out over 7,000 of them are being mailed today.
Okay, very good. It's a sign of the work to come.
Yes.
That envelope opener.
Thank you. Any other county employees with anything to share? Okay, seeing no one. We have received comments from the public. No public here in the council chambers. Is there anybody indicating on the phone? If there's somebody on the phone, we've unmuted phones. If you'd speak up, state your name and address. And Christie kind of indicates she sees no activity. So hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.